Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of Shirim, the Torah of Recovery with the Light Revealed. And Be'ezras Hashem, we find ourselves trying to live with the times, trying to draw down the timeless illumination of the Torah into the changing orientation of each and every person in their own time, to draw down that infinite wisdom that remains the same into the ever-changing framework in which we look at life. And as we come into parts of Shoftim, we find ourselves at the precipice of Elul. We're beginning the process of Elul. We're beginning the process of contemplation about return, about what it means to recover that which was always present, to uncover the goodness that rests hidden within that which appeared negative, the ability to return back to our true selves and to renew our commitments to ourselves and to the world and to God as we understand Him. And we find ourselves getting ready for Parshas Elul, as the Heligat Tzadikim point out, the Kashnitz Magid points out that we always read the Parsha of Shoftim in Elul, because Shoftim is the preparation to judge oneself, to take an accounting of oneself. Now, obviously, the only way towards judgment is a positive judgment, is finding the Nekudos Tovos within a person's experience. That doesn't mean denying the reality of negativity in a person's life or character defects in a person's life that need to be dealt with. It just means that I will not look at myself with an ayin ra. I will not judge myself unfavorably. I will not look to create more and more shame that will simply paralyze me rather than helping me develop a healthy way of active motivation towards healthy growth and change. And so the willingness and the demand to only look at ourselves with an ayin tova in the time of Elul, to laugh with ourselves rather than to beat ourselves up, is not the denial of the negativity, God forbid, nor is it the acceptance of the negativity as a reality of this worldly experience, because the individual is capable of infinite gradations of revitalization of self and the cleansing and the changing of the clothes. It doesn't mean accepting the burden. It doesn't mean living with the broken thing. It just means that when I am looking at the broken things, I need to look at those broken things with an ayin tova. I need to look at them from a perspective of I deserve to live a healthier life. I deserve to live with more connection to God. I deserve to live with more Yishuv Hadas. And because I value that deserved thing that rests at the root of my soul, that I deserve happiness, I deserve joy, not because the universe owes me anything or because HaKadosh Baruch Hu owes me anything, but because it's a choice. And if I live in this world, I have to make a choice either way. I might as well choose to live with the gift of this world, to live with the light that emerges specifically from within the living room of this world, which is the capacity to reveal light from within dark places. I owe that to myself. If I'm a Bal Bechira anyway, and Bal Karchach Atachai, and against my will do I live, and yes, it's more difficult for a person to be alive, but it's certainly better for a person to be alive because that's the place that we're going to reveal the depths of light, then we owe it to ourselves to do the thing that we're here to do, which is uncover the most potent form of redemption imaginable. I heard when I made Aliyah around 2 years ago to Eretz Yisrael, I live in a community where there's an anicle of the Kedushas Levi, the eyes of Rav Levi Yitzchak Meredishav, Rav Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha, the Sangoria Shel Yisrael, the tzaddik that when he was around, there were certain tzaddikim who would not say the words in the Yamim Noraim that we don't have a defendant. We don't have a defendant because we always have a defendant. We always have someone who has the capacity. If Rav Levi Yitzchak is alive and he's as alive as his teachings are alive, Ma beno b'chayim afu b'chayim, and the secret of Yaakov Avinu lo meis, that tzaddikim live because we connect ourselves to their teachings. When Rav Levi Yitzchak was alive, they would not say that there's no defendant for Klal Yisrael. There's a Vada defendant of Klal Yisrael. There's the light of the Kedushas Levi. And the anicle of the Kedushas Levi told me when I made Aliyah, he said there's a statement in the Gemara that says that a person acquires three things: Torah, the world to come, and the land of Israel, or the orientation toward lands of Israel. And the only way to be kona them, the only way to acquire them is through Yisurin, is through the element of suffering. And again, suffering is limited. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It just has to bring about an awareness of what the purpose of suffering is, which is to bring me back closer to the essential nakud of this world, which is connectivity to God and nothing else, and then to allow that light to express itself and extend itself from the innermost point of Dveikus to contain within itself the nuclear structure of my innermost circles, my family, my loved ones, the things that I care about, my kinyanim. The secret of the hyper-significance of the Nakuda of Amuna is that once I connect myself to it by denying everything else and connect myself to that innermost point, I then uncover the inherent elasticity of that point of Amuna to extend itself and contain within itself all of the rooms of the things that are valuable to me in my life. But when a person taps into the tachlis of Yisurin, which is Dveikus, as the Heilige Kamarna Rebbe says, so then they are Kona Eretz Yisrael. They acquire the land of Israel. They acquire the world to come. They acquire Torah. And this Anikel of the Kedushas Levi said, he said, it seems that this is a hard thing, that there's certain things that are good in life, and the only way to get them is through Yisurin, through suffering. And he said, but really there's another way of looking at this. The other way of looking at it is as follows, that the only currency available to a human being in this world is Yisurin. To be a human being is to be stuck between the guf and the neshama. And yes, that stuckness is the preparatory stage that will reveal the deepest secret of all things, which the gilui of the neshama within the guf and the transformation of the guf into a chashmal elyon that has the capacity of teaching my neshama more about HaKadosh Baruch Hu than the neshama can grasp, because the body keeps score, like we said, not only of the past traumas, but also of the future illumination of the secret of Gan Eden, Mikedem, and the secret of the body, the secret of engaging from the Eitz HaChaim, the secret of Tchiyas HaMesim Mamish, which is the value of the body over and above the neshama in the end of the day, because the body keeps score. It keeps score of that which is unspeakable. It keeps score of that which is most present, in spite of the fact that there's nothing to describe about it. It is, it abides. It is Malchus Sheba Malchus. It is that low place. It is the Dira B'Tachtonim, the lowest place imaginable, that in the end of the day will be revealed to be Evan Masu Habanim Haisel Rosh Pina, the Iker Nakuda of mitzvahs maisios, and doing the next right thing, of making a pot of coffee, of setting up the chairs, of doing simple actions that are chartable and measurable, in spite of the fact that they may seem small, is because we are utilizing our body to engage in drawing down the Ratzon Ha'elyon, drawing down the illuminated light of our higher power into the vessels of this worldliness. And the body keeps score. He says the only way that a person will acquire anything is through Yisurin. The only currency available to a person in this world is Yisurin. That is the nature of being a human being in this world. Again, it doesn't mean a painful thing, God forbid. It just means engaging with the difficulty, engaging with the reality that we don't know anything. And that's the Yisurin. And whatever level a person has to experience it on. And each person should only experience it on the least imaginable level from here on out. And it should only be Rachamim Rabim, and it should only be unmeasurable compassion and Rachamim and Chesed. But in the end of the day, to be a human being is to be in a place of Yisurin, meaning to say, it's not just that Eretz Yisrael, the Torah, and the world to come are acquired through Yisurin. The only currency in the world is Yisurin. And if that's the currency of the world, then a person might as well buy something good. A person might as well attach their mind to the world to come. They might as well remember the future. They might as well delve deeply into the meaningfulness of it all and the secret of the Torah. They might as well live a life of Eretz Yisrael, of a neshama beguf. And so we owe it to ourselves to uncover the Nakuda Tova. We owe it to ourselves to live with a sense of connectivity. And when I look at my character defects from that perspective, rather than beating myself down, so then I'm going to have a natural desire to want to change, rather than wanting to wallow in the shame about the immovability of my position, which is very often the thing that prevents a person from even contemplating the notion of change. And because they're so terrified of change, or we're so terrified of change, so we make it as if we don't want to change, or we're not interested in changing, but that's simply because we've been convinced that to change is an impossible thing. But as Rav Kook said, whose yahrzeit is tonight and tomorrow, the Ra'ayah Ha'elyon, that secret vision of the collectivity and the collective nature and the expansivity of the body and the soul in Eretz Yisrael, he says that one of the essential reasons that a person is incapable of returning back to their higher power in a true way of real recovery is because they don't believe how easy it is. And Rabbi Nachman says the same exact thing, because Rav Kook said about himself, I am the neshama, I am a nitzutz, I am a spark of Rabbi Nachman, and they're both speaking out that same nakuda, that tshuva is easy, return is easy if a person recognizes that I have no other choice. I have no other choice but to find the nakuda tova. The other way doesn't work anymore. Pushing myself to change out of fear of more shame, I'm already covered over by the million layers of shame that prevent me from even contemplating change. But if I find a way, a derech min hatzad, a path to the side that ignores the shame, it deals with the responsibility, it deals with the fixing, but it ignores all of the condition and the swampland of the soul that swallows us up in our feelings of inability, and we allow ourselves to grow by way of strength rather than by way of negativity and fear. That's the secret of the Nikuda Tova. That's the secret of seeing the self with eyes of goodness. And when it comes to the time of return, when it comes to a time of recovery, there's a way of looking at the self which really gives us a clear path, a two-step dance that enables the actual application of changing, of the willingness to change, of becoming more than what we are in this moment, of uncovering the secret of the infinite capacity that rests within us and uncovering our true strength. believing in ourselves, understanding the true power of Nishmas Yisrael, which is fundamentally revealed in the secret of tshuva, the most radical notion that our present focusedness on past events has the ability to rewrite the very texture of those past events to the degree that the mitzias of those past events change in accordance with our current reorientation of them through the autobiographical narrative space that we apply to the narrative structure of our lives. Like the Rambam says, I'm a different person because the way that I thought about the previous experiences prior to tshuva and the way that I think about them now is totally different. The narrative is different. It's a different story. That secret is the secret of the koach of Nishmas Yisrael, the secret of tshuva, the ability to return. But what does it mean to return? When we have a hisorus, when a person is awoken with a desire to return back to their higher power, to return back to simplicity, to return back to health, to return back to letting go of negative habits, to return back to calmness, to return back to a state of mind, of focusedness, and a willingness to undertake the necessary effort that it will demand of me to be focused in this world, to be metzamse my mind, to attach myself, to do the thing that feels difficult, to push myself even further than what I believe my strength can muster. A moment of avoda, a moment of yichud, a moment of being present in this world right here, right now. That is what we're trying to do. We have a hisorus to be more present, to return back to Hashem. And what happens with that hisorus? What happens with that original awakening of the desire of the self to now begin again to try and orient itself? Because we know that if a desire emerges over and over and over, but it doesn't find expression, so then that desire is going to grow burdensome, and that desire is going to begin to be something that laughs at us, rather than the desire being the unending pulsation of the self to want to better itself and move upwards by way of strength rather than downwards by way of weakness. That repetitive desire of return, 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 be okay, learn how to be okay, be healthy, do that thing that feels difficult, attach yourself more to the things that are most important. Eventually, that unrequited desire is going to become like a laughing stock because I've never attempted to even satisfy it. And then when I have that desire, because I've had that desire towards returning to God and returning to self and returning to the best part of myself in the world and everything else, and the ability to say, Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Ha'olam, by not listening to it for long enough, it just begins to be a soft echo that is now kind of ignored, like all of the other voices that are blotted out by the Kol Hamona Shel Romi, by that loudness of Rome, that loudness of the distractions, that intense noise that seems to cover up the capacity of the mind's capacity to quiet itself down with the inyan of Hashkata. And so it's fundamentally important for the sake of all future thoughts and desires towards return that a person actually create a vessel for it, actually create a way of drawing it down, that the individual themselves should uncover their own strength to be able to actually apply the brakes and to set a limit, to create a vessel that is strong enough and focused enough by way of vision and being present in the here and now to encapsulate and draw down the spiritual illumination that I know orients me at the core of myself and to bring it into actuality. Higiyazman. There's no more time. There's no more time for a person to wait for those ritzonos to be without a vessel. A person must learn how to force those ritzonos into the vessels. As the Heilige Tzemach Tzedek said, that the avodah of Galus is the avodah of Oros, cultivating lights. But the avodah of Ikvus and the Mashiach and the avodah of Yemoisa Mashiach is cultivating vessels, learning how to build vessels, learning how to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the Tzimtzum, through the Tzimtzum, by way of the Tzimtzum, to come to reveal that the Tzimtzum itself and the constriction itself is also a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how does one draw down the illumination of Ratzon, the awakening of the will towards bettering the self in whatever small, minimal, irreducible way that a person wants to try and take a step forward out of the stuckness in this world? How does it draw itself down? So the first pasuk in this week's parsha tells us something fundamental. Shoftim v'shotrim titin l'cha b'chol sha'arecha. That you should appoint judges and officers by each and every one of your gates. Now the Shlach HaKadosh, the Heilige Shlach HaKadosh, Tzaddik, the Shlach HaKadosh, the Shnei Luchos Abris, the Or of Shevet HaLevi, that's Megala, that which cannot even be revealed, the Torah of the Shlach, which is a fundamental introduction to the Torah of the Arizal, because he was drawing down the lights of the Arizal in a way that would enable us to properly understand the Arizal, bringing it down into the body, Kiner Mitzvah V'Torah Or. And the Heilige Shlach HaKadosh and Rav Chaim Vital also brings it down in Sefer Likutim, that what this means is that each and every person is a city, as the Tanya points out. Each and every person is a map, and every map has many openings to it. Every map has many entrances and exits through which things can enter into the territory of the city and things can exit out of the territory of the city. The individual is a territory. Just as in this week's parsha we see that the individual is a tree, the individual is also a city. And cities used to have a lot of trees in them. In Eretz Yisrael, you see the trees, the forests. The person is a forest. A person is a tree. A person is a city of trees. And so a person has all of these sha'arim, all of these gates, through which insight is going to move outwards and influence is going to enter inwards. And these sha'arim, these gates, are the nun sha'are bina. They're the gates of understanding. The 50 questions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu poses to Eov in his silent attempt to comprehend the Yisurin, to comprehend the impossible emergence of oneness out of disunity, how to grapple with the lies of this world, how to find redemption, how to find comfort. Those are the Nun Sha'ari Bina. The Nun Sha'ari Bina represent those frameworks of thinking, those 50 ways of thinking that can have 50 in the 50, in the 50, in the 50, ad infinitum. Each shar is a hashra, is a way of thinking, is a way of orienting, a way of contemplating. Noida b'sharim bala. Each shar is an orientation of thinking as to how I am going to be misboinein on Metzias today. How am I going to grapple with the mixed bag nature of this worldly experience? And that's the nun shari bina. Every shar has a question and an answer, a way of coping. But every answer reveals just a further question till a person comes to that shar hanun, where we come to terms with the Eno Musag, that which is revelatory of the fact that we know absolutely nothing. It's the place of Amuna, which sweetens all of the Sha'arim and it cleanses all of the debris that has arisen within every Sha'ar, because every time I attempt to know something, I also develop more of an ego encasing, which gives me the sense that I can know something, which is fundamental because we can try and know everything. But there comes a time where the Shar Hanun needs to be revealed, which is the reset button that reveals the beginning of the next level that tells me that after all attempts are made to know something and all of the previous Memtesh Sha'arim, nevertheless, the 50th gate will always remind me that all of those previous 49 gates were just estimations and hasharos and attempts at a Havamina until I came to the maskana that I don't know anything, and then I come to develop more Havaminos, ad infinitum, as we've spoken about so often. But each person has all of these gates, these experiences, these trigger points, these orientation frames, these faces that we offer to others and to situations, etc., etc. And the shar, to bring something into the shar, to bring something inside of the gate of the mind, of the heart, of the body, to bring something down into the gate from outside of the gate, to actually draw down a surrounding insight so that it becomes something practical, I have to ensure that there is a safety mechanism that enables me to choose what I would like to draw into myself so that I can properly process it. The rutzon, the desire to change, is infinite in its strength. Ratzon is the highest thing that we have. It's the desire. It is klali. It is so generalized that it can express itself even without actually needing to have some actual kli of expression. In our minds, that will grow tiring, like we said, but Ratzon is undefinable, in spite of the fact that it's a very real expression of the self, and it doesn't represent the selfless self. It doesn't represent the infinitude of the self and the element of the Yechida and the element of the Neshama at its very core. But it represents the most ethereal kind of emergence of subjectivity, which is the emergence of desire. Desire is always fundamentally connected to something graspable or knowable. It's always directly influenced by a chachma, by some orientation or grasp. But Ratzon is ethereal and it can express itself because it's so dark to the degree that it doesn't necessarily have to find expression. But when we want to apply expression, we need to draw it down through the Shoftim and the Shoitrim. The way to draw the Ratzon into the Shar, the way to allow that initial burst of enthusiasm into the gates of the self, to allow them to undergo the process of integration so that this transcendent ideal towards wanting to return back to some stage of innocence actually has the strength to descend down the complications of the mind, down through the constriction of the seichel, into the place of the midos, into the place of embodied emotional reality and the visceral sense of being an individual with a neshama in this world, and then into action, and which reveals an actual expression of becoming more, actually expressing, furthering my connection to the infinite. In order to do that, it needs to undergo the initial desire needs to undergo a tzimtzum, a contraction through the shoftim and the shoitrim that we have to appoint at our gates in order to ensure that the gates of self remain open in order to receive that initial burst of enthusiasm of the Ratzon to change and that secret of the Hisaurus that comes in the time of Elul, which the Rebbe Rashab says is just the spark coming closer to the source of the conflagration. which naturally is going to awaken a furthering and a desire in the Eish of Elul, in order to create some semblance of actual change, of drawing down Oros into Kalim, then we have to appoint Shoftim v'Shoitrim. Shoftim v'Shoitrim are Chachma and Bina. Shoftim v'Shoitrim are the two ways that we process spiritual illumination into practicality. Shoftim v'Shoitrim are commitment and perseverance. The decision to commit, the decision to live in accordance with this spiritual ideal, and the willingness to give the effort necessary for the persistence and the perseverance of this mindset for today, and then to do the same thing the next day. The shofet, the judge, the judgment is the element of chachma. The judgment is, this is what a person should do. This is when I decide this is what I do. The judge decides what needs to be done. This is the ideal that I want to live with. But in order for that shofet, that judgment, to traverse the conditions of self and become something practical, there needs to be a shoter, there needs to be an officer, there needs something to ensure the perseverance within the original moment of decision making. There's the decision making, which is fleeting, and then there's the perseverance of that decision making to draw it down into actuality, to live my life in accordance with the tzimtzum necessary to do this thing that I know is best for me, to change that thinking pattern that I know is wrong for me, to let go of this thing that is unhealthy for me. There's the initial burst of enthusiasm, and then in order to draw it down into the body itself, into the embodied sense of self, in the dir b'tachtonim, it needs to undergo the process of the shoftim and the shoitrim. The decision to live my life in accordance with this principle, even if I'm not in a place of truly believing it, but that decision that I make, that point of choice, that this is the decision, the judgment is made, I judge that this is how I would like to see my life. And then the shoter is the enforcer who ensures the willingness to take the effort to live with that decision in an applied way, which demands conditioning oneself to overcoming the desire for instant gratification, overcoming all of the natural things that block us, and identifying the character defects that disable us from taking the next step. And the way through this is identifying the helpers, of speaking to friends. This does not get done without chavraya, chaverim, connectivity, because one cannot identify the sha'arim of themselves. One cannot necessarily identify the place and the blockages. That's the secret of hisboidedus. From the isolation of the self, I come to have a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that reveals and reflects back to me the places of situm and the places of closeness, so that I can now come to unpack them. But the secret of hisboidedus, of talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like one talks to a friend. And there's two paths in the hisboidedus. There's the path of talking to Hashem, and there's the path of talking to a friend. And one needs both very often. And a person has to play shoftim v'shoitrim titin lecha b'chol sha'arecha. Each and every person. Zakter Chaim Vital. Why doesn't it say b'sha'arim? Speak in a plural form. That you should appoint officers and guards by all of the gates. Why is it in the singular form? By your gates. Zok the Heilige Rav Chaim Vital, in the name of the Arizal, and the Shloah Kadosh brings this down, is that each and every person has all of their different gates, the gates of perception, the doors of perception that allow for my own kernel of subjective self to encounter the world and interact with the world, to transmit out from my own inner world outwards and to draw in from the outward world inwards. And that is the process of drawing something down into a kli. That is the process of taking a makif, something that surrounds the mind as something ethereal that is not yet defined, and allowing it to go through the process of developing levushim, developing a garment of thinking and application on an emotional and practical level that will have a real impact and a shift on how I live my day-to-day life. That's the secret of shoftim v'shoitrim titin lecha b'chol sha'arecha. Lecha is the gematria 50, which is the nun sha'arei bina, and b'chol sha'arecha are the 49 gates, because all of the gates were created in the world. They were all given to Moshe Rabbeinu chasar achas, except for the secret that there's a chasar achas, that not each and every person will have a gate. Not each and every person will have the shar nun. Not each and every person will have access to that 50th gate. Nobody has the 50th gate. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that 50 gates of understanding were created in the world. Moshe Rabbeinu received all of them except for one. So which was it? Did he receive all of them, or was it missing one? Elama, the recognition of missing one, of Adayin being deficient, of still being imperfect, is in and of itself the secret of the 50th gate. And each and every one of us has that access to those gates of experience where we're trying to draw down light. And the only way to do it is through, first and foremost, applying a shofet, a decision that this is the way that I would like to commit my mind. This is how how I would like to commit myself to functioning today with eyes of positivity, with eyes of positive judgment, and then the willingness to cultivate a shoter, which is the application and the willingness to follow through. That's one of the elements of the kavana of Elul that Rabbi Nachman describes in the sixth teaching of how one draws that which is outside of my mind into a practical place. First and foremost, there needs to be the patience with the self to cultivate the shoftim and the shotrim, the willingness towards drawing the light of inspiration and the ratzon into the vessels of application and emotion. Take time. Time takes time. It works if you work it, but it takes time and it takes work for a person to cultivate those shoftim and those shotrim. So first and foremost, the person has to say hamtain. I am going to be patient, because in my patience towards cultivating the vessels of drawing down this light into actuality, I am encountering the very beginning stages of the process. And then Rabbi Nachman describes the fundamental kavana, the intentionality of change as oriented to the time of Elul, as being a split bag between an upper yud, a lower yud, and a connection between that's representative of the vav. Meaning to say that the aleph, which is what one should think about anytime that they want to reorient themselves and begin again, it's the wonder, the pella ha'elyon of the ability to change through the secret of tshuva and to draw down that ratzon through the shoftim and the shotrim into sha'arecha so that it becomes something practical. But first and foremost, one must recognize that in order to enter into the secret of the vav is the vav hachibor. The vav is drawing down the illumination of that ratzon which rests at the top of the vav down into maisa which rests at the bottom of the vav. The secret of the breach hatichon, the secret of the yesod that's ola ad harosh and yored ad hasof. That's the vav. But in order to draw down the light from the top of the vav to the bottom of the vav, we need the two yudin. We need the yud ha'elyon, which is the shofet, which is chachma, that decides what it is that I would like to live in accordance to, what is the ideal. And we also need the yud tachton, which is the bina, which is the willingness to persevere in the application of that attitude to the degree that it becomes expressed in our own lives, to the degree that we can reveal a little bit more goodness in ourselves and the world, and in that be mamtik zayin alts. Any nekuda of goodness that is revealed in a person's life, in their neshama, in and of itself is a moment of geula that goes into the ocean of the perpetual moments of individual redemption that will ultimately lead up to the full redemption, the full tshuva of the world, the full emergence of Tchias HaMesim, and the opening of the cities of each and every person to join into the Beis HaMikdash, where each and every person will partake of the light that they cultivated in the process itself, Be'ezras Hashem.